You know, the thumbnail didn't lie. We have something super spicy from this particular top 8. Now, we're, of course, talking about the store showdown at the Holmes location for Alternate Universe. Now, I wasn't able to attend that event. As you could probably tell from the previous video, I was over at the Banish Zone, but a lot of cool things ended up happening. Congratulations once again to Craig. I was joking with him in Discord. Save some store showdown wins for the rest of us, man. You're just taking down everything around here. But we'll get to that in time. Let's take a look at the breakdown and then the top 8 lists. Now, for this particular event, as mentioned, I wasn't able to attend, so I'm going by other details that I found in Discord. This event had 28 players, and just some notes about the lists we're going to be discussing. Only 6 of the top 8 lists were provided, so there's 2 unknown. If you were at the event and you know what they were, let me know down in the comments or hit me up and maybe we'll do a follow-up video. Next is I'm also going by images. I loaded everything into SWODB by hand, and I'm just kind of guessing on some of the cards, specifically some of the sideboard stuff. Players had cards overlapping other ones. I'm trying to guess by the cost that was showing and then the corner of the image that's there. We also don't have full deck lists as far as sideboards go. We have the main deck, but some of the players did not show what their sideboard was. So kind of guessing a little bit here. We'll talk about it as we go through. So spoiler alert, we're going to start and end in kind of a similar fashion. We're going to lead off with Palpatine. This was one of the top 8 lists. Now, compared to what, and again, spoiler, Craig has been running, this is green-blue. Opting for the 30 health base, this is kind of interesting. This was one of the lists that I was taking a stab at what was in the board. All 60 of these cards were in the picture. I'm going to throw the picture up just briefly now so you know what I'm looking at. I was making an assumption about where the sideboard was physically positioned. So again, if somebody knows for sure, let me know. What's interesting to me is the choices on what was main decked and what was sideboarded, but since we're unclear, maybe it's not as interesting, maybe it's not as spicy as I'm thinking, but Emperor's Legion is pretty cool as an inclusion in general. The Chimera one of, I do have to wonder, is that just a collection restraint? We have seen this kind of thing show up in other lists where if you're playing a late game control deck, paying 10, I mean, that's a big number, but you're probably going to get there, especially in the mirrors. And sometimes these things can absolutely take over a game. Is Chimera really the card that does that? I don't know. Hopefully the players can chime in and clarify. I also want to point out the spicy Admiral Mahdi tech. I thought that was really cool. We saw this talked about locally and has been making its way around where Mahdi usually has been showing up in, say, Vader decks because you slam Vader Leader or even, as you can see here, Vader Unit. Vader Leader, at least you can play the Mahdi, attack with Vader Unit, use the ability to off Mahdi, thereby untapping the Vader. And if you have Vader's lightsaber attached, that's potentially an enormous amount of damage coming at your opponent. Heaven forbid you have more than one. They're just dead. They're just going to die. And I watched that happen a couple weeks ago at 7th Dimension where that exact scenario happened. How often that happens in this list, I mean, you do have the Palpatine ability to off the Mahdi. You have Death Trooper to try and trigger it. You could, of course, target it with any of your own removal. It's kind of cute. It's kind of cute and will give you that surprise factor where, oops, by the way, that 6/6 Childson smacks you for 18. You know, it could be a surprise. Speaking of surprises, let's talk about one that is not a surprise. That lack of surprise is another Boba Yellow. This one was not me. This was another pilot, but the list is what I'm going to say the standard one. This is the Bobby Sapphire list, the KTOD guys, if you're not familiar. They have really refined this, and it's interesting to see the list doing so well. I guess interesting isn't the right way to put it because it's kind of expected at this point. This is an incredibly powerful list that can do some really unfair things very, very quickly before your opponent really has a chance to take over. Boba does Boba things, and of course you have the ability to play cunning in a shell where you're not paying extra. The Jabbas out of the board are also very cool. I've been messing around with them myself. I'm not super thrilled, but this is also a set 1 meta where, you know what? I expect Jabba to get better. There will be more trick cards eventually, but also sometimes you just use what you got to use. That's kind of why Swoop Racer's here. It does the job that it needs to do. But this is definitely a fun list. I've been enjoying it. I've said it before. I'm going to be playing it. So I'm not going to make you wait till the end for the spicy tech. We're kind of sticking it somewhere in the middle because the IG-88 yellow list did in fact top 8. It looks like it got knocked out in the round of 8, and we are missing one of the round of 8 player deck lists. So I'm not sure what the other one was or what knocked each of these players out. But this list, and I couldn't get confirmation in time for the video, but one of the locals at one of the other AU stores, because I happen to hit those up, has been running this for the last few weeks. And if it's not the identical list, it's damn close. Like all of these cards I saw in sleeves and in play at different points, or getting played at different points. The Jedha City, I think, might be a change, but I'm not sure. The spicy tech from the player that I talked to, not necessarily the pilot, it might be, is that the IG-88 typically gets to, on the IG-88 deploy turn, you want to try and outmaneuver or do something else to lock down the ground arena so that way you can get maximum value out of IG-88 pushes by enabling the additional attack value on your other, well, your all space. This is oops all space, which is definitely an idea that I personally wanted to try for a while, where I feel that over the long term of this game, it's going to be very interesting to see how the evasion works and how that ebb and flow will exist given the 2 arenas, because other than Strafing Gunship, which actually makes an appearance here, there's not much that allows one arena to interact with the other. You're typically doing that with events. So here, and we've talked about it before, a lot of decks are very, very, very soft in space. And let's not oversell it. Mining Guild TIE Fighter and regular TIE Fighters and Outer Rim Headhunters are not like setting the world on fire. But at the end of the day, if you have 6 space units, your opponent's not going to have much to get through. I imagine Bright Hope might pose some issues here, but then you also have Surprise Strikes and Open Fires to help punch a hole through it, or even just Imperial Interceptor to ensure that, hey, I'm still advancing a card. Additionally, you get Infiltrator's Skill to just Saboteur past it. There's a lot of cool stuff going on this list. I really want to try it out. Let me know down in the comments how excited you are about IG-88 top 8ing. Now, again, at the time of the recording, I only have one of the top 4 decks, but it was so exciting about the IG-88, I wanted to get the video out. And since it's now a couple days after the event, I don't know how likely we are to get those other players to check back in and be like, hey, here was my deck list. So we're going to go with what we have. This is one of the more standard Han lists now that I'm looking at a lot of them. We are getting comments from the Banished Zone video on what some of the players were running, so I hope that the players here as well check in, let us know what they ran and what they liked and what they didn't like. Unfortunately, this particular list did not appear to have a sideboard with it. I'm sure there was one, it just wasn't in the image that I was provided. So we can only guess. There is some spice in the main deck, though. Patrolling V-Wing is not something that I expected to see, and I doubt many other people did, unless you're a Han main and maybe everybody's sleeping on it. So let us know. I do like the idea of getting the replacement card, especially for a deck that can be very card hungry, but the body is so anemic that I'm just very curious how this performed for them throughout the day. Other than that, numbers can be changed, but I don't think there's really much else in this list that is too surprising for a Han player, especially in light of what we've seen in recent successful deck lists. All right, now we're into the finals. Again, this is me making some assumptions on where the sideboard was physically positioned in the image. So if I happen to have some of these incorrect, my bad. I'll try and remember to edit in both the actual image I was provided as well as the SWDB image here. But this iden list is pretty interesting because it is sporting a full set of Spark of the Rebellion out of aspect it can definitely break open the mirror, and you can tell that this player was clearly gunning for control mirrors. You got restocks, you got Spark of Rebellion, you have a full set of Search Your Feelings. Look, this person was determined to never lose the mill mirror. I'm going to find my restocks, I'm going to find them every game, and I'm going to have more than you, and I'm going to then mill you out in these control mirrors. Obviously, it didn't quite work out against every control deck, but we're not quite there. I will point out in the sideboard that Mission Briefing is one of the cards specifically. It's a 3-cost, single aspect red card event. And I'm pretty sure based on the tiny corner of the art that I can see that it's a Mission Briefing and not an Open Fire, which I initially thought it was, because that makes sense. It's just an additional removal tool. But I'm pretty sure it's Mission Briefing. Why? I'm not clear. Honestly, I think it's probably as an additional mill tool, because it's choose a player, not you draw 2. So you could target your opponent with it, force them to draw more in a long, it gives you an extra, air quotes, vigilance. It's not really, obviously, but I think that's pretty cool and a very interesting tech, especially when you consider the bounty hunter crew coming in and recycling even more of these things. It gives you a way to board out things you don't want, but bring in something that could be useful. So I do appreciate that a lot. And of course, we get the devotions, which were a nightmare for me from other decks. I imagine it's a nightmare for a lot of people with this deck. But pretty cool iden list. So as mentioned, Craig takes it down once again. Craig mentioned that they did not update the list from the previous events and just ran with it and proceeded to, I guess, demolish all of the competition once again. Now, if you're interested in hearing more about Craig's thought process, more about what went into creating this monster and how it's played, I did have an interview. I'll put the thumbnail and hopefully remember on YouTube in order to edit in a link to it. If not, you can just check the links in the description / check my my channel and see what's there. But there's a lot of cool things going on here. Craig has been playing this for a long time, since the beginning of the game, knows the deck inside and out, and clearly has been rewarded with it. As I was joking about earlier, we started with Palpatine, we're ending with Palpatine, and maybe Craig will have some mercy on the rest of us and allow us to win some of the other events. But congratulations to Craig. Congratulations to all of the top 8 players, and shout out to all the players that came out to play. So just a quick rundown of this particular event. There are some other ones that I'm working on, getting some details for. Look for those videos coming out in the future. If you have any showdowns that you have information about, just hit me up in Discord. You can find the link for my server in the description. Shout out to Alternate Universes, once again, to all of the top 8 players, all the players at the event, and of course, Craig for taking it down. This showdown season has been wild. We're seeing a lot of creativity come out, and I bet there's going to be a lot more to come. But that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time for more Random's Thoughts.